This book was presented to you by Taylor Riley, Ryan S., Brandon Vila, and Cassidy
In our second
Flynn.
reading of Art and Max, we looked at a new visual design of the story, which helps the reader understand the mood and the change from beginning to the end of the story. We are looking at the color of the sky. The color of the sky plays a key role in understanding how the characters are feeling. When it's lighter, characters are more at ease. When it's darker and more warm, characters are really frustrated and begin to change. We see a slight change back from how the beginning was, from that seafoam green. It goes a full spectrum, seafoam green, red, purple, to a blue, kind of back to our seafoam green, which helps the reader understand that we're shifting back towards the beginning of the book, to the characters feeling content in how they feel, which I thought is super interesting and was a great way to structure the story.
Art and Max by David Weisner. We have our two main characters, Arthur and Max, that make up the foreground of the cover. We see a hint of the background, which is a desert setting, but the focus is up close and personal to our characters, indicating they are the focus of the story, and the desert is mainly just a setting with not much importance. Art and Max are standing back to back, which suggests some sort of conflict between the two. Art is glancing at Max sideways with an annoyance and seriousness, which represents his artistic personality and temperament, while Max is not looking at Art, but looking at his paint jar with happiness and excitement, which represents his attitude throughout the story. The color yellow of the paint also symbolizes this happiness. We also see how Max's jar of paint is spilling over and mixes in with Art's paint palette. This indicates colliding personalities between Art and Max throughout the story as well. Next, we have the paratextual features on the inside of the cover. Here we learn what the story is about and the gist of what is to come. Arthur knows how to paint. He's ready to share his wisdom with Max, who has a lot to learn but can't wait to dive right in. Their story begins here. Is it about creating a work of art, or about an uproarious, eye-opening adventure, or both? Art and Max will find out very soon, and so will you. Here we learn that the story is either about an adventure, creating art, or both. But when he says, Max, who has a lot to learn but can't wait to dive right in, suggests it could be a story about beginners as well. Underneath the book jacket we have another cover. The binding is gray and boring, but quickly changes into an array of colorful paint splatters. The paint splatters are fun and not serious whatsoever, while that gray binding is the opposite. But it quickly becomes those paint splatters, indicating the progression and change of the characters and the story. Going into the story, we have blank, light brown pages. These represent the desert sand in the story. The title page has the title, Art and Max, and the author's name. We see Max running towards a new adventure and a new experience of art, the subject and Arthur the character himself. The desert is the background, while the characters make up the foreground, indicating the importance of Art and Max once again. We see the title is Art and Max. During the story, Arthur wants to be called Arthur, not Art. This indicates his change of character throughout the story, with the title being Art and Max, not Arthur and Max.
Next up is the back cover. On this cover we see the three lizards from throughout the story together. This picture is another way of obtaining character information. This picture shows us the power that the purple lizard has by having the other two lizards hold his paintbrush. The way the two small lizards are looking at the purple one suggests that they are afraid of what the purple lizard can do. The smaller frame, surrounded by negative spaces, indicates the size of their role in the story. The lizards were right there in the middle of the story, but still held a fairly small role within the characters. The paint splatter also suggests that whatever painted the hardcover got a little carried away and paint dripped onto the back.
The image our group chose to analyze is the 14th page of the book. This page is set up as a comic book style with only 4 words on the entire page. This allows the reader to make up their own dialogue or interpret what is happening solely from the pictures. Rather than the framing traveling from left to right, the frames work up and down, or vertical, implying energy or excitement. The visual arrangement contributes to rhythm and pace of each action. The spacing of the images and frames conveys the impression that we are looking into a window. The setting of the story is more realistic, however the foreground is what makes the story more animated and cartoon-like. In the foreground, the first comic strip is an up-close picture of Art and Max. There is nothing to be seen in the background other than a pale purple sky. The background and the images are plain. They have small mountains and pale purple pink sky, similar to a sunset. The pale purple colors may suggest power and importance. The closer we are to Art, the darker the purple seems to look. Art's skin color seems to be a darker shade of purple, symbolizing royalty and importance. Max seems to be blowing what looks like yellow paint onto Art's hand. Yellow typically symbolizes happiness, as if Max is trying to make Art a more happy reptile. In this image, we are close up with the characters. This makes the reader feel more connected with the story. In this frame, Art is facing towards the right, showing safety, whereas Max is blowing color on him towards the left, symbolizing an adventure or something new. The first panel is also the biggest, which may portray that it is the most important of the three panels. In the second frame, we see that Art is now many colors than what he was before. He is now a combination of green, orange, violet, and a lot of yellow. In this frame, we are not as close to the characters as we were before. This shows the reader is distancing themselves and are spectators of the story. We are also able to see some of Art's friends at the end of the frame, looking worried for their friend. We also see that Max is running in the opposite direction of Art with his finger held high into the air. We can infer from this image that Max probably has an idea due to his body language. In the third panel, Max portrays to us what his idea actually is, which is a large fan. It looks as if the fan is plugged into something. However, we are not sure what or where to because they are out in the middle of the desert. We are now even farther away from the images now that we can see all three of Art's followers at the right end of the page. The image of the reptiles vary. Art is the more realistic looking character and compared to the rest, as well as the most serious looking. Although the other four characters do look like they are lizards of some sort, they are not as detailed or as serious as Art.
When looking at how the story is told in Art and Max, we notice there is no narrator. All of the words in the story are seen through conversation. This helps engage the reader as if they were in the scene themselves. Also, we notice there's a great use of punctuation. This gives characters their own voice and helps the reader understand how the character is, whether they be frustrated, happy, or confused, and so on.
After reading Art and Max for a second time, the reader will continue to find new connections to the same illustrations and themes. Throughout the story, the three small lizards can be seen interacting with the other characters. Although they do not have any dialogue, the three lizards impact the direction of the story throughout. The author leaves these characters to only influence the story from within the illustrations. As you can see here, the needy purple lizard believes now that Art is back to his normal shape and has a cool new skin, Art will finally be able to resume painting his portrait. In the final few frames, you can see that he is just itching to continue. He soon finds out that Art is no longer interested in painting a normal portrait and finds himself covered in paint, while Art and Max explore their perspectives on painting. Because the reader only has illustrations to see the lizards affecting the story, it is important to look into each frame to fill the gaps that the words leave. Throughout Art and Max, certain themes and values rise to the surface. Paying attention to detail, as well as expressing your true self, play a big role throughout the adventure. Max quickly learns that paying attention to detail will be extremely important when putting his friend back together. After making a rough draft, Max then can focus in on the finer details in Art to bring him back to life. In the end, once Art is back together, Max tells Art they should paint some more. Art decides to join Max by leaving his comfort zone and engaging in a different way of painting and being true to himself and showing his new colors. Art in Max features a framing technique that guides the reader frame by frame throughout the story. The text is all dialogue between Art and Max, and each of them have their own unique text style, which reflects their own personality. Art has a more formal and flowing text, while Max has a more slanted and excited feel to his text. These features add to the characters we have begun to understand by giving us subtle information to each character, as well as reassuring the reader knows that Art and Max are two very different animals. Next, we have the back flap with the author information about David Weisner. David Weisner has always been a talented artist, graduating from the Rhode Island School of Design. Weisner has always looked for a way to showcase his different artistic talents in the way of children's literature. Art in Max was Weisner's opportunity to show different medias of art while tying it into a children's story. Weisner uses his variety of different medias to progress the story along and reinforce the importance of attention to detail.